Hello, in this video I'd like to give you an overview of the Worldox Indexer console. The Worldox Indexer console is the tool that you'll use to monitor the Worldox Indexer activity and also do things like update the schedule or possibly do some troubleshooting if you have any issues with your Worldox databases. Now the Worldox Indexer console can also be your primary indexer. So it can be run as a desktop application-based indexer to primarily keep your databases up to date, but most of our sites run Indexer as a service to do that. Now, if you're brand new to the site, you've just taken over as the Worldox administrator and you're not sure what they're using, what you can do is connect to their Indexer PC and check to see if Indexer as a service is installed. So two different ways that you can do that. One, if you go into Task Manager on the Indexer, and then you go into Services, and we'll just sort it here alphabetical, and I'm going to scroll down to the W's. I see Worldox Indexer service, and I see that it's running. So I know that Worldox Indexer service is installed, it's running, so that's going to be my primary indexer. Another thing you can look at is when you install Worldox Indexer as a service on the Indexer PC, it's going to create this shortcut on the desktop. So if the shortcut's here, Worldox Service Installer, you can double click on that. That'll bring up this dialog that gives you information about your Indexer as a service, such as what account it's using for Worldox Indexer as a service. It should be set as auto start delayed, and then it'll give you a status. Currently here it's running. Now if it was stopped, the start service button would be ungrayed and you could click on it to start it and put it back into running mode. So what you want to determine is if you're running Indexer as a service as your primary indexer. If you don't see that installed, then you're going to be running Worldox Indexer console as your primary indexer. And if that's running, it's actually going to be up and running like this on the PC, and you'll have a dialog box up showing you activity. So if you see that, then you're running the Indexer console as your primary indexer. And if you're running the Indexer console as your primary indexer, you'll also have a copy of this shortcut that starts the wsindex.exe file from your network Worldox file in your Indexer startup group. So every time you log on the Indexer PC, it automatically starts the Indexer for you. That's another big difference between running the Indexer console as your primary indexer versus running Indexer as a service. If you're running Indexer as a service, you don't need to log into your Indexer PC, because once you boot up the Indexer PC, the service will automatically start once the PC's fully booted up. When you're running Indexer console as your primary desktop indexer, then you do need to log on the Indexer PC with your Indexer account so it starts this application and starts the indexing process. So just to be clear on which one you're running, in this case I'm running Indexer as a service. Now since I'm running Indexer as a service, as your Worldox administrator, you could create a shortcut to start the Worldox Indexer console right on your PC so you don't have to connect to the Indexer PC to monitor what's going on. So once again, this Indexer console, if I go into Properties, it's starting an application called wsindex.exe, and it's starting it from your network Worldox folder. So what you could do on your PC as the Worldox administrator, just create a shortcut to start that wsindex.exe from the Worldox folder on the network on your PC, and then you could start this up and it'll let you see what's going on with Indexer as a service running on the Indexer PC. So when I pull this up, it shows that I have two resources here that I'm indexing. I've got one drive letter and one UNC in my case. The drive L is my legacy documents, so those are my pre-Worldox documents. And then I've got my production UNC where all my new cabinets are stored. So all my Worldox production files are being saved here. I can see from the status that they're both posting. So not only is my Indexer as a service running, but it's currently posting against these two resources. Now, in order for your databases to be kept up to date and for any scheduled events that are assigned to these resources to be run, you have to see it in this posting mode. If you should see it as stopped, I'll show you what that looks like. One, your databases aren't being kept up to date, and two, none of your scheduled events for that resource are being run. So let me just hit the stop button here. Let me stop this, and then I'll go ahead and refresh, see how the icon changes to look like a stop sign, and also the status changes from posting to stopped. So if you ever check your indexer and you see that it's stopped, those databases are not being kept up to date and no scheduled events for that resource are being run. Now, the way your databases work is you have a meta database, which we used to call our profile database, and then you have your text database. Your meta database is kept up to date real time. So as users are creating documents, editing documents, copying documents, doing anything that would trigger an update to the meta database, those are being updated within seconds. But your full text, that's updated after hours as a scheduled event. So your metadatabases, as long as you're seeing this in posting mode, those are kept up real time as users are working on the database. So within seconds of a user saving a document, that meta information and file date range information and description and comments information is indexed and searchable. But the full text doesn't get updated till at night after hours. Now, if I want to put this back in posting mode, I'm just going to check it and hit the start button, click OK. It asks me where do I want to put it in posting mode, and I want to go with Indexer as a service, not the desktop. So I'm going to click OK. Notice when I do this, it brings up a viewer screen, so I can view what's going on with this particular resource that Indexer as a service is keeping up to date. And as users start working on documents and saving new documents, I'll start seeing activity displayed in this screen that'll show date timestamps, the user code, the file name, and what they did to that particular file. Now I'm going to go ahead and just hide this to get back to the main screen. And those are your start and stop buttons. Now you also have your viewer button. Your viewer will let you view what's going on with the process that's currently running. So here where I have my Indexer as a service posting against this resource, if I want to see what kind of activity is going on, I can click on the viewer button and it'll bring that window back up so that I can see what activity is going on. So as users start creating documents, editing documents, copying files, doing other things with files, I'll see that activity start getting displayed in this window. I'm going to go ahead and hide this. You don't need to leave that open. That's just if you want to view what's going on. You have your refresh button, which is going to refresh what's currently displayed in the screen. And then your schedule. This is going to bring up your Indexer schedule. And this is a typical schedule that I would see at a single site location. So what we're doing is 6 nights a week, we're updating both the meta and the text databases at 10 o'clock. I've got a job here where I'm going to import new client matter codes. So in this case, I don't have a system where it's automatically adding those client matter codes right to Worldox. What I need to do is I've got a system where I'm exporting new codes to a CSV file from my time and billing or accounting system, and then I want Worldox to automatically import those codes once a day, and so I have that set up as a scheduled event here. Another scheduled event I have is run salvage purge. What this is doing, this is looking at the Worldox salvage bin, the recycle bin, to see if any files have been in there longer than 3 months, I'm going to automatically delete them out. Because with the Worldox salvage bin, as you start deleting files and sending them to the salvage bin, they're going to stay there indefinitely until you purge them out. So in this case, I only want the last 3 months of deleted files hanging out in the salvage bin. So I set up a scheduled job to go ahead and run that. And I'm running that on Saturday night. And the reason I'm doing that once a week on Saturday nights is also on Saturday nights, I'm building a brand new set of databases. So Saturday night at 10 o'clock, I'm telling Worldox to build a brand new set of meta and text databases for my files. And then I'm just going to update them for a week. And then the next week, I'm going to build another brand new set. This is just going to keep the databases more efficient, make them faster, and search results better. And then once a week, I'm just going to do an update to my meta and text on my legacy drive. And you don't even really need to do that. Your legacy drive is pretty much stagnant. You may be pulling files out of legacy, but usually you're not adding files to legacy. So typically you don't need to update your legacy databases nightly like you do your production, but if you want to update them just to keep them clean once a week, that's fine, and that's what I'm doing here in this case. You also have access to your logs for both the meta and the text, and these are for the jobs that get run at night. So when you update your meta database at night, or you update your text database at night, or if you should run a manual update during the day for some reason, that would also generate these logs. And so whatever resource I have highlighted in this screen, if I click on, let's say, logs meta, it'll bring up the folder and display all the meta logs. And then if I want to open one of these up, it'll give me information about what took place during that meta database update. And the same thing for the text logs. So if I want to see what was going on during this text update, how long it took for the text update to run, how many folders it hit, how many updates it did to certain files, I can see all that information in this log file. So those will give you information. Worldox will keep those log folders cleaned up. They're not going to grow indefinitely. It'll keep the most recent log files in there for you to review, and then older log files it'll automatically delete out of there. Now you also have some menus up here that you can go into. Got tag and untag, refresh. So some of these just assigned to buttons right on the button bar. Database update. This is for some reason you need to do a manual update to, let's say, your meta and text databases during the day. Let's say for some reason at night the update didn't take place and now you want to run it during the day just to get the databases back up to date. You could run a manual job from there. You go to your properties here, so database meta properties. The logs will take it to the same place as this logs meta. Then you got diagnostics and repair. The diagnostics and the repair is something that tech support may have you go into, or they may connect and go into if you're having any issues that you want to troubleshoot on the site. Now the same thing for the text. And then you also have a cache option here, and this controls the text cache that gets built by Worldox. And if you want that copied to like the local PC for building a new indexer. So if I go to text and go to cache, and I'm going to build a brand new PC to replace my current indexer with a new one, I can start WS Index on that new PC and prepare PC to be an indexer, and that'll do all the prep work to get it ready to be an indexer PC. So when you get ready to remove the old indexer and replace it with this new one, you've got a lot of the prep work done. Then you also have the option to sync the local and network text cache here, test the local text cache, or wipe out the local text cache if you're going to remove this PC as an indexer. Filters. This brings up what you have down here as far as cabinets and what's currently being indexed. So with the current UNC highlighted, I hit filters. It shows me that's indexing the subdirectories, the meta, and the text. And you pretty much never go in here unless you're working with tech support and you need to exclude something. So let's say you have a problem folder and it's causing your databases not to build every night because it's hitting this one particular folder and there's something in there that's damaged that's causing the job to hang up. You may be working with tech support, and what they may do is add that particular problem folder here and tell the indexer just to skip that folder and exclude it so that it can make it through everything else for the indexing process. So that's about the only time you really go in here is if you're working with tech support and they need to make some changes with you. And then the same thing with this delete. If you need to delete some databases, don't do this on your own. But if for some reason tech support needs you to do this before you build a new set, then you have that ability right here through here. Now you're also going to have some tabs up here. So right now I only have one indexer as a service. I've got my all tab, which will display everything. Then if I just want to see what's being responsible for this particular indexer, I can click on it, and this indexer is processing both drives. Now if you're at a site where you have multiple indexers, maybe you have multiple offices, or maybe you have a really large data set, so you've got multiple indexers running, you don't have to start a different WS Index indexer console to look at each indexer as a service that you have running. You'll be able to see them in here, and you'll see additional tabs. So if let's say I have indexer as a service running on 2 additional PCs, so I have a total of 3 indexers running, then instead of just seeing this one here, I would see 2 other tabs that would list the name of the indexer as a service, and if I clicked on those, it would show me what that indexer as a service was responsible for running as far as what UNCs or drive letters it was responsible for indexing. And then if you need information about, you got your help about, which will bring up information such as your license key activation and where Worldox is running from, and give you some other information, what rev of code you're currently on. You get that. So that's pretty much an overview of the Worldox Indexer console and how you can use that to monitor your indexing process at your site.